Hey guys. Hi guys, it's Erin from Ginger's Florals. It's a gorgeous, absolutely gorgeous February Saturday, so I thought that I would come outside, take advantage of it. I wanted to talk to you guys about my favorites and the easiest 5 cut flowers to grow from seed. They're all super easy to grow. They don't take a lot of extra care or work, and they will give you all the blooms that you want. If you only have a small space, these are the ones that I recommend that you give a go. So the first one is zinnias. The reason I like zinnias so much is that they have such a long season. If you have the right conditions and it's warm enough, they will start in early summer, July, and they will go all the way through until the end of September. They're cut and come again flowers, so the more you cut the flower or the stems off of them, the more they will put out. And because they come in so many colors, no matter what your color palette is, you have a zinnia that can fit that mold. My favorite types are the Benaries, I don't know how to say it, Benaries giants. Their flowers are just, they're huge and they're mildew resistant, and they just put out buckets and buckets of flowers all season long. One of my favorite colors is salmon rose. It's just this soft color. Zinnias can be a little bit harsh in their flower shapes, so the softer colors speak to me. And the next one is the Queen Lime. The whole series are beautiful. The flowers are a bit smaller and they're slightly less disease resistant. However, the colors are unusual and they blend well with most color palettes. My favorite is the Queen Lime with red. They're such a warm, interesting color that draws people in. So that's zinnias. The cons about zinnias is that they are hate lovers. Here in zone 8B, every now and again, we have a sort of cool summer that doesn't get real hot. And in that case, it'll take you much longer in the season to start to get blooms, so you won't get quite as many. And like I said about the Queen Lime, some varieties are sort of they're more susceptible to things like powdery mildew, and in a damp climate like we have, it can be a problem. But overall, you can direct seed them. They're super easy. They will give you so many blooms, and if you have a small space, put a couple of these in there and you'll have blooms for months. The second one I wanted to talk about is cosmos. So again, these, like the zinnias, they're cut and come again, so the more you cut, the more blooms you'll get. And they can also be direct sown like zinnias. If you wait till it's warm enough around here, that's usually May. The soil is warm enough that you can direct seed them, and they'll start going for it. My favorite varieties right now for cosmos, and forgive me, but they will change year over year. It always is a little bit different. But right now my favorite is apricota. It's sort of this peachy color, but the throat of the flower it's a lavendery purple. It's magical. And the other one is Cupcakes White. So the Cupcakes White, they have really big flowers, and instead of having split petals, they're all sort of fused and they have sort of a ruffly edge. They do look like a cupcake flute, like the holder that you'd get a cupcake in, the little paper cup. That's what they look like. And every week that I had those at the market last year, somebody would come and ask what they were. That's always a good thing if people are interested and curious about what's in your bouquet. The cons about cosmos, I would say, is that, again, like the zinnias, they need that heat. Once the summer gets really going, July and August around here, they will just go and go and go. But that can also be a con, in that cosmos can put out too much and you can get overwhelmed. I've had that happen where I've had them grow and put out so many blooms that I just couldn't keep up with deadheading, and eventually I just cut them all down and started a whole new row. And actually, because they grow so quickly, that worked out really well for me, and I had a whole new crop of flowers later on in the season. So the third one that I want to talk to is black-eyed Susans. Rudbeckia is the Latin name. Again, these are cut and come again. They're not quite as prolific as cosmos or zinnias, but every time you cut a flush of them, they will put out another bunch of flowers, but it just takes a little bit longer for that to happen with black-eyed Susans. My favorite two varieties, actually three I'll say. Indian Summer, they're the big school bus yellow black-eyed Susans that you're used to seeing, but they're cold hardy here and in some cases can be perennial. They're also, they're really well suited to the weather here because we get really hot and dry summers, and they like that, but then they can also tolerate some of the cool and dampness that we have later on in the season. And then the other one is Indian Summer, or sorry, I just said Indian Summer. The next one is Sahara. Sahara is it's a mixed bunch of seeds, and it'll have everything from a red, like a really deep burgundy sort of red, through it'll have brown flowers and sort of soft yellow flowers and blush flowers and beige flowers. The mix of them is it's just so much, and I'm gonna grow 3/4 of my row of black-eyed Susans out of those this year, just because they're so versatile, and they're some of my absolute favorites. And they have all different shapes. There'll be single collarettes, and there'll be fluffy zinnia looking flowers, cactus looking type. It's just a really good mix. And then the last one is Triloba. So that one around here, I'm not going to start any seeds this year, but I've had that particular variety self-seed, so I'm okay with it. They have it's a really tall variety that'll get 6 feet tall here, and it'll put out long stems with sprays of those tiny little yellow black-eyed Susans that are just magical in the summertime. They add that little something to a bouquet, and they're so easy to grow here in this zone that they literally just seed themselves. The birds will pick up the seeds, they'll plant them somewhere else, and then another one will come up. So I've learned to recognize what the little seedlings look like, and I just don't weed them out in the spring, and I will have them. And if you live in an area like our zone 8B, or that's probably the top, I think zone 9 is the top end. They need some cold period. You can grow them and have them sort of self-seed around also if you want to. And they're also easy to pull if it's an issue and you don't want them to spread. But if you have a small space, 1 or 2 of those will fill buckets and buckets of flowers. It puts out so many stems off of one plant. There is one con that I can think of with black-eyed Susans, and that is sometimes they're susceptible to powdery mildew. Generally they're pretty healthy plants, but every now and again, if we have an unusually cool and wet season, the powdery mildew can happen. So another one that, number 4, the fourth one that I want to talk to is snapdragons. Now, some people struggle with snapdragons, but I found them some of the easiest seeds to sow. They're super tiny, and you have to take your time to do it, but they are fast to germinate, and then they're prolific. They around here in zone 8B, they can be fall sown. I've done it. It didn't work out so well for me, but we had a really crazy winter with loads and loads of rain, and then the spring didn't really thaw out until later in the season than I'd like. So that probably had a lot to do with it, but generally they can be fall sown. They're hardy to this zone. The flowers, they are a cool season flower in general. Some varieties will go over the main season and you'll get blooms, but in the middle of the heat of the summer you probably won't get blooms. These ones I would not sell or direct sow. They want to be taken a little bit of care of when they're young and when they're germinating. So sow them inside under lights in a controlled environment. But the other fantastic thing is that they come in so many colors. You can get white, yellow, pink, red, orange, purple, any combination thereof. The only color that you can't get is blue. And there's lots of different shapes. You can see the little bedding type that will only get 4 or 5 inches tall. Some of the ones that I grow will get 3 feet tall. My favorites are anything in the Madame Butterfly series. They're an azalea type is what they call them, and they're just a roughly beautiful spike of flowers, and they have some really lovely color combinations that you can get in those. But those are my favorites. They're the most heat tolerant, so sometimes our springs will be really cool and then it'll skip straight to hot. And those varieties, I should say, there's many different colors. They can handle that a bit and not just bolt and go to seed and then you have nothing. So the cons on snapdragons, I would say, is there's a couple of them. One is that they're not the same kind of cut and come again as a zinnia or a cosmo. They will reflush, but it takes a while. So the first set of blooms, cut them off. If you leave them in the ground, they will put out another flush of blooms, but it'll take them a couple of months to get there. So that can be a con. It may not be, depending on what you're using it for. And the other one is slugs. Around here, zone 8B, slugs really like our snapdragons. So I've found Sluggo. There's a couple different kinds of organic slug bait killer stuff that's out there that it works just fine to keep them away, but do that before you have a problem, because once the slugs get in there and start to eat them, they don't recover. And then the number 5 that I wanted to talk to you about, oh, my dogs are running around being crazy. The number 5 that I want to talk about was sunflowers. Anybody can grow sunflowers, especially if you grow like a cut and cut, not a cut and coming. If you grow like a Pro Cut, the professional series, they bloom in like 55 or 60 days, super fast. So you don't have to worry about having a long enough season for them. You will, trust me. And they can actually, some of them can even handle a little bit of cool into the summer or into the fall. I had successions of them growing all the way through September last year, and they did fantastic. The reasons that I love them so much is, one, how quickly they grow and flower. Another is just they're super easy. They can get almost 100% germination every time. And they do come in a wide range of flowers. In the spring, I'll grow white ones. In the summer, it's, you know, your classic yellow sunflowers, and then going into the fall, there's sort of plum, brown, and red varieties that follow into those colors, and they're just so fantastic. It's worth it to me, and you can grow them really close together, so you can get a lot. The types that I prefer, again, is Pro Cuts. There's lots of different varieties out there. If you just want them out there to grow and be beautiful in your garden, you can buy some black oil seed from the grocery store and throw it out there, and they'll grow, and they'll bloom, and they'll be beautiful. The cons that I would say for sunflowers is, in general, they're a one cut flower. So if you have a smaller space, you're only going to get one bloom from that flower. So that can be a con, but because you can sow them once a week or every 10 days, sow another one, and because they can be so close, you can still get a good rotation of flowers all throughout the season if you want to do that. And then another con is it's a pro and a con. So you absolutely can direct sow them. They will easily sprout and grow. My struggle here is that we like to have lots and lots of songbirds and just other native birds, and they will eat those sunflowers the minute you put them in the ground. It's like they watch you do it, and then they'll go right down in there and get after them. I don't know how many hundreds I lost last year not even thinking about it. So there's a couple ways to combat that. You could put netting down over top of them until they're all germinated, or you can start them in trays like I do. If you do start them inside, you want to put them in the deep trays because their taproot goes down, and they need a lot of room, and they need it fast because they grow really quickly. So those are the 5 cut flowers that I wanted to talk about. There's one other bonus that I want to add to this. No good set of bouquets or cutting garden is actually full until you have some greenery or some filler. So my dogs are goofy over here. So my favorite easy filler to grow is basil, actually. And yes, it could be the normal basil that you get from the grocery store, the Genovese basil, but there's a couple of types that are grown specifically and sold, the seed is sold specifically for cut flowers, and one of them is Mrs. Burns citrus basil, and then another one is cinnamon basil. Those 2 are my favorites. That citrus, the Mrs. Burns lemon, it's something else. Until you smell it, it's hard to describe. If you take basil and you add lemon meringue pie and you put those 2 scents together, and it's just the most intoxicating thing. I grow batches of it that I don't even cut for flowers, just to have it, to be able to walk by and rub it and smell it. And when you do put it in a bouquet, that whole scent will fill a room, and people are drawn to that. It's always a good thing to have some kind of scent in your bouquets if you can. And basil is super fast to grow. It wants the heat, like the zinnias, the cosmos. It likes the heat to actually go. And the thing about basil that you need to remember is when you do want to cut it for your flowers, you really want to wait for it to be bolting. You want it to start to flower. That's when the stems get woody enough that you can cut it and they won't just immediately flop and wilt. The other things to do with that is to cut them the day before. You want to cut them when it's cool, and cut them the day before, get them into water and let them just sit and rehydrate. And 9 times out of 10, they'll recover from any wilting that they do. They just need the time to do it, and you don't want that to be while it's sitting in your customer's hands or in your kitchen dining room in a big display. So the cons, like I said, they need the heat. So again, if you have a cool summer, which does happen around here, they may struggle, or they'll just be later in the season. You won't have them quite as early, and then knowing when to cut them. Otherwise, they're pretty hardy, and for me, the little songbirds, they like to run around inside of there, because once they start to flower, they'll put out seed pretty easily, and then the birds will snatch it and eat it up, and they just love to be out there. So yeah, that's I just wanted to talk to you guys, take advantage of the sunshine, get outside and talk to you guys about that. Those are the five cut flowers that are the easiest to grow from seed and give you the most flowers, and my favorite varieties of each of them. And then we talked about the basil also, just because it's hard to have a cut flower garden and not have some kind of greenery or filler. As you can see behind me, I have lots and lots of foraging that I can do in the woods behind me, and we do that a lot, but there are several cut flower greens that I actually grow specifically for that, and basil is one of them. I just love them. The customers love them. When I do my own arrangements, I almost always have basil if it's available. So yeah, I'm glad you guys stuck around. I hope this was informative, and I hope you give every one of these a try. If you like this video, give it a subscribe, and then I will hopefully see you guys in the next one. Thanks, guys.